The Walking Dead Season 7, Episode 13, Bury Me Here. Very interesting Morgan episode. I really enjoyed it. I don't know what to really expect from Morgan by the end of this episode, especially with that last scene. I couldn't tell if... I'm pretty sure he's just lost it. I don't know if he's like seeing people or, what the case is going to be. But he was just, he's cutting his stick. I'm assuming he's sharpening it into a spear at this point. He's that's the official change. He's like changing his stick into like a spear. But, he's just kind of waiting, then he stops and he like looks over his shoulder as if someone's right there. But we don't hear like any footsteps. There's not like a board creaks or anything like that, like someone's walking up behind him. So I don't know if someone's actually there. I think maybe he is hearing stuff in his head. We saw him go crazy again when he's like in the middle of the road. So it's really hard to say exactly how, that's going to play out. So I'm excited to see what they do with them. But this was a really good episode focusing on Morgan, which was good. And I like that because Morgan, I think they had an episode earlier in the season where it's like it focused a lot on Morgan when he first got to the kingdom. And it was just, a lot of talky stuff. And that was like the second episode in the season. And they were introducing the kingdom, of course. But Morgan in general is like a talky character. When he shows up, there's a lot of talk, not a lot of action, because he doesn't want there to be a lot of action. And they're building up to, of course, the season finale. We only got 3 episodes left, which I didn't realize. But, we're building up to the end of the season and building up to this great war for, the next season. And things are just building up really, really crazy. And this was a great episode for how they're going to find some way to really induct the kingdom into, this big war with Alexandria, the hilltop. And I'm sure eventually, I forgot what it's called, like Seaside, or, the community of all women. So I really enjoyed that. I like what they did with Morgan in this one, where he's going through and things are kind of working out. He's like, things are actually pretty good. We have Richard, who, of course, is kind of on the side of like Daryl and Rick and everyone from Alexandria, from basically the main group, where it's like, we need to take out the Saviors. Like, we, as the kingdom, need to really get involved, and he's trying to, convince Morgan to do it so that Morgan can convince Ezekiel. And I love the way it played out. It was kind of sad, of course, but the way it just played out, I was like, okay, it's pretty interesting how it's going. We have some stuff with Carol, and she's, early on she kind of goes back to the kingdom, but that's not really a permanent sort of situation. And, she kind of takes off for most of the episode, and she kind of comes back at the end to really kind of help Morgan out. And they swap places, which I'm really excited to see how that plays out as well, because they definitely swap at the end, where she's like, okay, things are real messed up. And I think the reason she swapped was not only to help Morgan, where he's like, I can't be here anymore because, what happened. So she kind of swaps places, and it's like, all right, you stay here. I'm going to kind of go in, and we'll see what happens if I can convince Ezekiel. That's how I feel personally. I think she's kind of back on board with, killing again, kind of like he is. So we'll see how that plays out. But the way the story kind of went, and, it starts off with them putting like one melon in the thing. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Are they, I don't know. When it first started, I honestly thought this was Ezekiel deciding, we will see what happens. If they freak out this much and, like tell them a lie or something, like the crops did this or something was bad, and that's why we have literally one melon. Let's see what happens with that. And that's where I thought they were headed at first. I was like, okay, that's really interesting. But then it goes into the rest of the episode, and we see them, going through, and they're, picking everything, and it's like, crops are pretty bad. The woman pees on herself because of Shiva, which was a funny sequence. But things are, kind of getting bad. And so they go through, and they have their melons, everybody's, packed up in the trunk. And then we get to like this weird random blockade, and we see that it, when they actually go to move it, it's like, okay, this ends up, it's not just a line, it's actually an arrow. And so they go around the corner, and they see just a pit, and it says, bury me here. And I thought that was very interesting. And I think that's in the beginning of the episode where Richard is actually digging that. And I didn't think of that because I was just, it was like early on in the episode. And it just didn't occur to me like, oh, that was, right there. Like, he was the only person digging, in the beginning of the episode. If I paid attention to that, I probably would have assumed that that was him that did it. But because I didn't really think much on that sequence, I was just like, okay, that's weird. What the heck is going on with that? And it just didn't occur to me because it was kind of obvious. When I remembered it, I was like, oh yeah, he was doing that in the beginning of the episode. He like picks up the backpack and everything, and he just starts digging, and I'm like, okay, well, if I remembered that, it would have been obvious that that was for him. But it was just like, okay. So they go through, we get to the meeting, and that's when things just, oh, that's when things fall apart. And it was in a good way, although in a sad way. And that one melon, like, it just made a huge difference, and the whole plan was for Richard to sacrifice himself because that's what he assumed was going to happen because how he argued with the guy before. And then he ends up shooting, I believe it was Sam, was the character's name. I probably should have actually remembered it considering he died. And I actually care that he died. I liked Richard, which is the craziest thing. I liked him as a character, and this kind of made me hate him for like the final moment that he was in the series. I was like, I kind of don't mind that Morgan lost it on him because it's his fault that this kid died who recently lost his dad and has a younger brother. And that was kind of the whole thing, was like, yeah, I have to be, the father to my younger brother because we actually did lose our dad. And now this little kid has lost his father and his older brother. And it's just like, man, that just makes me really mad at Richard. And, it was crazy the way they kind of switched that, at the very end. I wasn't losing it when he was, threatening Carol. I already knew, like, that's not going to work as soon as he mentioned it. But, it was clear that he was pushing things further and further. And I was surprised that it did get to the point where he was willing to even sacrifice himself, which I thought was cool, but obviously it failed. And, this guy kind of flips it up on them and, he shoots this kid, basically, out of all the characters, that was the kid. And so he shoots him basically in an artery in his leg, and he just bleeds out. And that's when things get, crazy, because Morgan is losing it. And that was before he even found out. And he just randomly kicks, the yellow thing, and he just kicks it. And it's just like, boom. There's this melon on the ground, and it instantly clicks. It's like, yep. It was the same for me. I was like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, it was Richard. And I figured it was him anyway when it started. And it was like, we counted and stuff like that. They always do this in TV. There's always that one scene where they go to the person that's guilty, and it's like, I don't know what happened. And then it cuts to the person who's guilty, just like, It's like, yeah, okay, he did it. Like, it was really obvious. And so it gets to the scene, or they do the flashback, when he's like, I'll cover the back and stuff, and it's like, oh, that makes sense. And they even had the bucket behind him, which I thought was cool, that it was actually, like, in the scene. So I was like, that's kind of awesome that they did it that way. But that was it. And I couldn't believe Morgan lost it like that. Like, they talk about, like, when they actually get to the next meeting, and Ezekiel says, we'll talk about this now. But, of course, that's when the Saviors show up. I was like, all right, things will happen. They get their melon. They'll take off. And then that's when they'll have the conversation. And that was not the case. They get their melon, and Morgan he goes full force. He hits him, and then he chokes him out, and that was it. And in a sense, Richard succeeded. I guess. It's really hard to say. I mean, it depends on what the heck Morgan decides to do if he's truly lost his mind, because he's a back and forth character. Like we saw, recently his pacifist mode, which everybody hated. But before that, he was effing nuts. Like I think it was season 3, the episode Clear, when he showed up for the second time in the series, and he didn't join the group because he was losing it because he had recently lost his son, and he was just crazy. And it was like, he's kind of nuts. And he's like, no, I'm going to stay out here. I'm going to stay here. And they flashed back to that, which was really cool. And they flashed back to basically his history with the series and, his son and, all the Clear stuff. And I was like, that's really cool. It was a great way to do it, to kind of revert this character back to who he was in the beginning, and then also add a new layer onto his character where it's like, I lost this kid that looked up to me that I did end up caring about, and I also killed this guy who I was kind of cool with. Like he was friends with the people at the kingdom. He's been there for a while now, and it was very interesting how all that stuff played out. He lost someone that mattered to him again, and then he took out someone else that he was okay with. And it was like, I did that to show you guys that we understand. And it was just nuts. It was just a crazy way to do it. So I don't know if Morgan is going to lose his mind and he's going to go after the Saviors, but I do think that this kind of kicked things off. Like that little, it's one melon, and their whole thing was to kill somebody. We have to kill somebody over this one simple little mistake, and they end up killing someone. So it was just very interesting. And I think, although the plan didn't go like he wanted, Richard, like I said, did end up starting, kind of the fuel for the kingdom to join this rebellion. Because it's like, man, if we just joined, we wouldn't have, we'd still lose people, but we wouldn't have lost two people pre-game, sort of. So I think that ultimately his plan succeeded, just in the worst way possible. So crazy, crazy way to do it. Two deaths in the episode for characters that I thought were definitely going to last for much, much longer. I thought for sure Richard, I figured, we have this guy, the young guy with his little brother and stuff. They'd have some way to keep them at the kingdom so that both of them end up living and he gets to stay with his brother. Maybe Morgan would die and that would be the inspiration to make this, this young child another main character to take Morgan's place. And it's like, nope, he's dead. The guy who came up with the plan, Morgan lost his effing mind, choked him to death. That's a visceral way to kill somebody. So we'll see what happens with Morgan, but it was definitely a good episode. Surprising that we got two deaths. And it had been a while. It had been a while for some characters to die. And even though they were lesser characters, they definitely seemed like characters that would last much longer than just this one season. And the way that they both end up dying was very surprising. So I certainly enjoyed it for the way it played out. And honestly, I can't wait to see what they do with Morgan's character now. And hopefully, I'm assuming, considering he choked a dude to death, he's back to being the man that will fight in order to survive. Because, this was literally him, like, because he was the one that was asked, like, hey, Ezekiel has, the reign literally over the kingdom. And he turns to Morgan and is like, what do you think? Should we join them right now and fight the saviors or what? And the first thing Morgan does is go the pacifist route. And that's exactly what led to Richard. Definitely, he went way too far on the other end, while Morgan went way too far as a pacifist, where it's like, we just can't, because we'll lose people. And it's like, well, you'll lose people no matter what. And he sees that now, even with his pacifist route. He has someone that looked up to him, that dies right next to him, or, in front of him when they get him on the table. And then he snaps and he ends up killing somebody else. And all of that was his pacifist route, and him deciding in that moment to tell Ezekiel, maybe we should hold off. And he sees that ultimately led to these two deaths earlier than, what it probably would have if they just decided to join anyway. So, very interesting, and we'll see what happens with him, if he's truly nuts, because he definitely looked like he turned and was listening to somebody for a second, and then he went back to it, and the episode just ends. So, I don't really know what to expect for that, but I'm excited. Carol switching places with him, like I said, I feel like that's her also going back to kind of the killing route a little bit, and trying to convince Ezekiel, hey, we need to join with Rick and the others to take out the saviors so stuff like this doesn't happen, and we don't have people going to insane lengths to try to sacrifice themselves to prove a point, which can also go bad and cause them to die as well as someone else who was totally innocent. So that's how I feel like that's going with Carol, where she get especially with her having this sort of odd relationship where Ezekiel kind of likes her. I feel like that's where it might be headed with her, trying to convince him to actually join. And who knows, Morgan I think is a wild card. He left but didn't leave. And, he took out the person that he had the issue with. So he doesn't hate anyone else in the kingdom. It's just going to be that area that, of course, reminds him of the person he lost. So he's kind of a wild card at this point. And I can't wait to see what they do with it. But really enjoyed this episode. Glad to see Morgan, on a bit of a different path. Although I did enjoy... outside of the decision he made with Ezekiel, like, we should probably wait. I like what they were doing with him and the guy where he was training Sam and stuff. And I was like, I think that's actually entertaining to watch. Just him teaching this young person to be the pacifist. And I mean, he even says the line, like, when the enemy hurts themselves or hurts you, they also hurt themselves. And of course, that was that spark with the rebellion, especially for Morgan specifically. So I can't wait to see what they do with that. But we'd love to know what you guys thought about Morgan's change in this episode. And also, of course, losing two characters. Did you care? Did you think we were going to lose them early? Does it not matter because they were so new? We'd love to know your thoughts on that. And, of course, what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below. Let me know. And, of course, thanks for watching.